Episode 216 Above Ground Podcast.
Operation Gunny Claus.
Disclaimer. The hosts of this podcast, Timothy Patrick and Will Foley, are by no means medical professionals. However, having lived experience with mental illness themselves, they have gained useful perspectives on common mental health issues that some of us struggle to overcome on a daily basis. By sharing their stories, they hope to create connection. By creating connection, they hope to help you find your purpose. And through purpose, we can all begin to build the foundation for positive mental health. This is Above Ground Podcast.
Coming at you live with real conversations about mental health from the perspective. It's time for Above Ground Podcast. Now your hosts, TPP and Will Foley.
Gung ho ho ho, right? We got Gunny Claus here today. He's going to just fill us in on where he came from, what he's been up to, and shed a little light on the 22 per day, the veterans that we lose every day to suicide. So Gunny, welcome to the show, buddy.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad I ran into you guys down at the event last year, and we actually got able to get on air together.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, man. It was good to run into you at Tulip Fest also. You wearing your kilt right now?
I was wearing it yesterday when I was down in New York City.
Were you? Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah,
So
it's amazing. Even in New York City, people will actually stare at a kilt.
That's crazy, though, because there's a lot of people that wear kilts. I mean, generally at different times of the year, obviously, for more celebratory stuff. But I'm sure there's a lot of people that are you a Hibernian?
I was a member of the Hibernian, yes.
Okay. Because I thought that might have something.
Corner from me.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So 22 vets per day die by suicide, Gunny. And that's terrible. And 22 too many. It just goes without saying. It's like the numbers are just, you can't lie about the numbers.
The bad part is that's the numbers that the VA agrees to.
Well, right. And those are the numbers that they say, that people say that they may have a mental health issue, right, or something that leads to that. But that we're not talking about the stuff that people come from the addiction part of it or any of the other stuff.
Right. So a lot of veterans, unfortunately, will self-medicate, and some of the things that they use to self-medicate, they can overdose on. And so an overdose can easily be said it's just an overdose. It wasn't a suicide. And then, if you have somebody who's never been in the VA system and nobody knows that they were a veteran because they've never talked about it and they commit suicide, nobody's looking to add them to that number. And so they get uncounted.
What we're saying is that more than what we really know is that more people die by suicide every day than are counted. And that goes across the board, no matter what culture you come from. And we found that out, and it doesn't matter which segment you come from. We found out that it is underreported. And as we all know, that mental health has been so played down that we're just coming to catch up to say that mental health is just as important as our physical health. And we realize why, because so many people are dying in the shadows alone for no reason. And as a vet, you gave to your country, you gave yourself with a promise that you would be taken care of and looked after. Do you think the system adds to that? Where do you see the good in the where do you see the balance of the negative and positive within the system? And do you see a negative and positive, or is it all one-sided?
You can't sit there and say that a healthcare system doesn't provide something. So, if you're a veteran and you have the ability to use the VA for your medical needs because you don't have anything else, that's a positive. The negative side is having to fight for that care. So the example I use is if I go over to Albany Medical Center and the VA just sent me over there because they weren't able to do the procedure in a timely fashion. So I was sent to community care. I went over to Albany Medical Center and I had my care. And it was, comparable to what I would have gotten in the VA if they'd been able to do it. It wasn't, any better or worse, but it was just in a timely fashion. What people don't understand is that all costs the VA money that comes out of a limited budget. So if the government says that you've got $1 billion and you've got 14 million veterans, that's not a lot of money per person. But I go across the street to Albany Medical Center and I get that care. They make money off of that care because I'm paying my copay, the insurance is paying them, and all that money is being recouped, and they're making money off of every time they do a procedure. So their best interest is to do more procedures, do more testing, take care of a person better. Whereas the VA, yeah, they'll see you, but then they'll be like, okay, what do you want? And their simple answer to veterans is, right, so they say you have a problem, and they're like, okay, so what do you want? And you actually have to self-diagnose and have to know what it is that you need from the VA so that they know that that's what they're going to give you. But generally speaking, it's just a pill. They're going to give you some type of medication instead of taking care of the problem.
So you mean they want you to play Dr. Google before you come in, so you know what your problem is, so you can direct them in the proper direction when they're doctors?
It's because of it's because they don't get funded properly. That's the problem.
Well, the thing is they have limited funding.
Well, you can call it what you want, but we can all see that government healthcare doesn't necessarily work.
Yeah, well, I mean, most
it would if it was funded properly. It's just, I think the way that they earmark, but right. But the thing is that, I mean, I don't know if any of the defense budget covers VA expenses.
No, the VA is completely separate.
Right. See, that might be part of the issue too, is that that is, I think, part of the conundrum is that we've separated everything so much, and we've said that this doesn't deserve that, but we need to put all the money over here. And then people's egos get in the way. It's a clusterfuck, but to burn it all down with no plan to build it again or to privatize everything doesn't work either, because privatization is just going to let them tell you that they won't care for you because they don't agree with what you need. That's the problem with privatization. So you have to have a balance of the two, I think, in my personal opinion. And I see this every day because I work in the state system now. So like, you still need to provide care for people, and people are falling through the cracks. And you are right. There are so many barriers, and especially when it comes to vets, I've heard so many stories about people having to fight just to get covered for something that is a basic coverage for most people who have good health insurance.
And unfortunately, the VA here, I had to go to a funeral for a young Marine several years ago. He had been in the VA hospital for a period of time in the mental health ward, and they released him. They said he was good to go and he could get back out into society. And if you know the VA, there's the parking garages for Albany Med built on VA property. And he walked out the front door, walked to the top of the parking structure, and dove off and committed suicide. He wasn't out more than 20 minutes, and now he's dead. And because of the medical malpractice that had been in place at the time, there was no recourse for the family or friends or anybody for him doing that, because back then it was actually illegal to sue for medical malpractice against the government if you're in the military or in the VA system.
So you can now, because I was actually going to ask, kind of, Will had asked more on the healthcare side of things. Now, why can't we be a little bit more proactive with it, as far as what, when you're in the Marine, or even in training or whatever? Can we have more support for these guys? Can we bring up the word mental health? Can we talk about these things?
Well, unfortunately, in the military, any type of weakness, whether it's mental, whether it's physical, whether it's emotional, whether it's spiritual or a relationship, your family or whatever, is seen as a negative side effect. It's not seen as something that you want to have and you need to ask questions and help for. So, there people have gone through training, and they get done with training, and you find out later on that they had a broken bone, or they had a serious strain, or they had a bad medical problem that was only aggravated because they didn't take care of it fast enough, because they didn't want to be seen as being weak. And
that's maybe like some of that could be part of it. You know what I mean? If there's a yin and yang to everything, then like, look at it, it's, as I'm sure you can back me up on this, standing up, being vulnerable, asking for help is the complete opposite of weakness.
Yeah. But the thing is in the military, it's not seen as a benefit. It's not seen as a good attribute. It's seen as a weak attribute. You're told to do something. You ask what it is that they want you to do, when it's done by, and what are your resources, and you get it done. If you don't get it done, unlike other places, people don't understand that it doesn't get done.
I was just going to ask, in your opinion, what is there something that could possibly help in that situation to balance it out?
Well, I mean, the thing is the stigma, and we are a part of society. You don't just hatch military members out of an egg and put them in the military and they're separate from society. We come from society. So all the problems and things that you have wrong in society, you have in the military in a microcosm. Until we as a society say that mental health isn't a negative thing, it will be a negative thing in the military because it's smaller, it's more compact, it's more focused. So it's even more of a negative in the military than it is in the civilian world. And so, and when you're in the military, you don't have the option to go to a civilian doctor and say, I need help. You're going to have to go to a military doctor on the opposite side of the spectrum. When I was a drill instructor, there are times where you would have recruits who were having problems. It would say that they didn't want to be there and that they may harm themselves. And we took that very seriously. We immediately get them to see the chaplain. We'd immediately get them down to see the medical personnel, the Navy personnel to make sure that they're okay. If we couldn't get them there fast enough, we'd actually have somebody watch them 24 hours a day to make sure that they couldn't harm themselves. But then on the opposite side, I had a recruit say that he wanted to kill me and the other drill instructors. And we're about to go to the rifle range. And so he's going to have a weapon, he's going to have ammunition, and he's going to have the capability and the time to actually do this. And so we took him down to see the psychiatrist, and the Navy looked at him and they talked to him for a couple hours, and they brought him out and they said he was good to go for training. And I had to stop and say, wait a minute. He just said he wants to shoot and kill me. And they actually had the audacity to say, well, isn't that what you're training him for? And I said, yes, but you're missing the point. We're training him to be able to defend our country and against foreign enemies. He's not being trained to kill me or Americans. He's being, there's a problem here between what we're sending out and what he's receiving and where that action is being directed to. And they couldn't understand the difference, and I'm like, oh, great.
Now, was that gentleman still within your service and under you for the remainder of his time there?
Yeah, we were able to, look at the way we may have said a few things, and we were able to look at the way he understood a few things, and we were able to clarify some certain things so that when we actually talked about, what we do and at the rifle range, he understood that this wasn't what we were really going for. And there are times, not every recruit says it, but there are times where almost every recruit hates their drill instructors. They're terrified of them. They hate them. At the end, it becomes this, love-hate relationship. They've changed your lives and you'll never forget them. Some like us a little bit more than others, but they all remember you.
Right.
I can remember my drill instructors.
Right. And like we said at the beginning of this, being Father's Day as we're recording this, man, like you really are a parental figure. And especially in those roles with the authority and just the structure and the teamwork and the machine like finesse that needs to happen for that type of those types of operations. Well, speaking of operations, and we know that the outlook is dark, but it's not bleak because there's people like you out there who are talking to people like us who do things like this. And you have another operation that you do because that big full beard that you have right there. You are Gunny Claus. And that's how we kind of came across together. And I know Tim kind of put this all together and reached out to you online, I believe. And then we met at whatever event. I can't remember what event. We've been to so many things. I don't remember what the fuck I was
Yeah.
at. So why don't you tell us about how Operation Gunny Claus started and what it does and all the things that you're involved in? Because you're in New York City a lot and you do a lot for vets. So why don't we get into that?
I retired, and I came back from San Diego. My father at the time was suffering from Alzheimer's, and I wanted to spend some quality time with him before things got too bad and he passed away. And, it's not easy reintegrating into society. There's media has a lot of misconceptions and puts out a lot of information out there that, isn't all necessarily true. It's glamorized to make and sell their product, either be a movie or TV show or a book or whatever. And so, started volunteering with some organizations, and one was the local Marine Reserve Units Toys for Tots program. I was putting out boxes, picking up boxes full of toys, and just helping behind the scenes because we had a reserve unit here. Unfortunately, the reserve unit was moved from New York to Connecticut, and the mission's still there though. And we cover something like 14 counties from the Pennsylvania border to the Canadian border. The Marine who had been in charge of it was also retired, and he called me up and said, "Hey, I need you to come out and do some events in front of the box so we can have a Marine representing the program." And I was, like, dude, I'm not really the PR type of guy. My job in the Marine Corps as law enforcement, as a drill instructor, is very stoic and not a really happy, jolly kind of guy. I'm not that. I'll scare people. And he's like, no, we got this really cool event. Why don't you come out and help us out and see what you think? And I was like, okay, I'll be there. And so for 2 days we did this event, and no joke, I scared every single kid. I mean, they ran away from me. I felt like Krampus. I didn't have the beard. My hair was probably about as long as it is now.
The nightmare
You know,
before Christmas.
Yeah, it was not good. And I said, look, I can't do that again next year, and he's like, well, I still need you. The need doesn't go away. And so after Christmas, I tried to figure something out, and I was on social media, and I saw through a friend that there was a Marine down in South Carolina, North Carolina, around Paris Island and Camp Lejeune, doing Gunny Claus. And I was like, well, that looks like something that I could do. I had a friend who had been in the Drum and Bugle Corps, the band that plays for the Commandant of the Marine Corps and performs with the Silent Drill Platoon. And they were able to get me the blouse. I bought the campaign cover from the same company that makes our campaign covers as drill instructors. I made it red, and I started doing Gunny Claus with Toys for Tots. But as a lot of things, there's more need than you realize. And you see that doing this not only helps kids, but it helps my fellow veterans. I mean, I can't count the number of times where I've been on social media and I've seen a Marine or a soldier or an airman or the Navy, not so many Space Force, few Coast Guard. And, I'll send them a message, it doesn't matter what time of year it is. And if it's not Christmas, they're like, dude, it's not Christmas. And I'm like, yeah, well, I'm just checking that list twice, helping out Santa. And they're like, okay. And then, there'll be a pause, and they'll be like, I really appreciate that. You really made my day. And, they don't tell me what's going on, what's wrong with their life that day, but you can see that it really made a positive impact. And seeing that, I'm like, wow, maybe I can help out, and not just during Christmas or the holiday season. And so I go down to DC for Memorial Day and what used to be Rolling Thunder and is now Rolling to Remember. I go down to New York City for the Veterans Day parade. I was in that parade, and I saw a gentleman on the side, and he had a Scottish pin, and I have a kilt that goes with my uniform, and I mentioned it to him, and he's like, "Well, you need to be in my parade." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, dude, you're standing on the sides of New York City street for a parade, and you have your own parade." I'm like, "Does it come with a bridge?" You know, and he gave me his card, and
That's
sure enough,
judging right there, Gunny. You're judging. You're
yeah,
judging.
well,
I know, but that's got to be hard though, because he might be selling you the Brooklyn Bridge.
it's New York City. You
That's
gotta you
right.
gotta take it with a grain of salt.
That's right.
And so, I got home and I looked him up, and Kyle, you know, it's his parade. He does the parade in New York City for Tartan Day. And so I went to the parade and I met a lot of great people. The West Point, the US Army Military Academy was there. They had a drum and pipe. And Annapolis was there. Their cadets were there and they have a drum and pipe. So, there's veterans there, there's military there, and I had a great time. And I did it that year, and I went and did it again this year. But this year I did it just as a Marine group. And, I'm trying to build up a presence there for the military, for the Marines to be in the parade. So that's why yesterday in New York City, I was wearing my kilt, getting the other Marines to see if they're interested in going and doing it again this next year with me.
That's awesome, man. See, this is what this is all about. You found your place and you were able to give back. And this has allowed you to open up this whole thing, man. That's awesome. You're doing
Yep.
such amazing work, man. Congratulations. That's so cool.
Yep.
Yeah, it
And,
is cool. I was just
Say
going to
again?
ask. No, I was just going to ask really quick because you would, you're the initial when you started to get into it. You're like, oh, there's a lot of people to help. I can help this guy. I can help this girl or whoever. But do you find that it helps you as well? And you being a stoic guy and coming from that, background that's very stoic and has that different connotations to it. Do you find yourself now kind of like Will said, opening up and being a little bit more, ho ho, hoorah, jolly?
So definitely when I put the uniform on, my persona does change. I become more jovial. My boss is jolly, so I say I'm jovial.
Okay. All right. We'll take that.
So I definitely exude more positive things when I'm in uniform. The really fun part is, taking the train down to New York City yesterday and back. I saw this little girl there, and when kids see the beard, and they see you and they're like, I think I know that guy, but I'm not sure because he does, he's not dressed like Santa.
I
And
have to
so-
say this. You remind me very much of the Miracle on 34th Street Santa Claus from the original because of your beard, because you have that style of gray beard. I'm sure by the time Christmas rolls around, it's probably grown out quite a bit more because I can't remember when we saw you in the spring how long your beard was. I can't remember.
Yeah, I trim it a little bit for the summer because it gets a little bit warm, and so by the fall, it can get there pretty full and nice. You can see it, and she's looking at her mom, and I'm like, don't tell anybody, but have you been good? And they're like, what? And I'll be like, eat your vegetables, listen to your mom and dad. If you have a brother or sister, you don't be mean to them, clean up your room, all the things that you want to positively reinforce kids to do that, there isn't a lot of positive role models out there these days. And so, I try to put that out there. And, for the kids that are at that age of where they're transitioning out of believing in the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, and other myths like that, I sort of bring them back in, and I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not Santa. That's my boss. He lives at the North Pole. I live at Troll Station, Antarctica. I did an interview outside of Comic-Con last year, and I said, yeah, the elves are great at making toys, but not so great at handling the list. In fact, they left it out, and Rudolph ate half of it. And Santa needed some help.
I love it.
Santa needed some help real quick, and he looked around and said, who can help? And he looked at the Marine Corps and he said, oh, these guys in every climate place, every embassy around the world. And we even sent John Glenn into outer space. Who better to help check the list? And that TikTok video's got, I mean, it's in the hundreds of millions of views on this page, on TikTok. And it took my TikTok page from like 100 to almost 10,000.
Wow, dude, that's awesome.
Yep.
That is so cool though, man. You have such a cool vibe, and you don't get to see yourself the way other people see you. So I will say this, as someone that was describing that scene, even though you're covered in shadow partly, I could see that you were lighting up as you were talking about that little girl. So it obviously has an effect on you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you ever see past, and I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know the terminology. Do you see past like cadets or who, people that you were drill instructor to?
That, I mean, is the best feeling in the world, because you train, I trained 3 platoons of roughly 100 Marines in each platoon.
Wow.
And that's 13 weeks, 24/7 that you're there with them, training them how to be a Marine, how to do everything. We don't take anything for granted. So they come in there, and I mean, we teach them how to cut their nails, how to shave, how to take a shower, how to do everything the Marine way, so that everybody's on the same sheet of music. And you've got your top 10%, the guys that really excel, and you notice them. You've got your bottom 10%, the ones that need that extra help, need the extra encouragement. They probably didn't think it was encouragement, but that's what it was. And then you've got the guys in the middle who will sometimes shine and sometimes won't. And my platoon, when I was a recruit, just before graduation, our senior drill instructor was going through the roster of recruits and looks at this one, now Marine, and goes, "Who are you? When did you join the platoon?" And the kid's like, "I picked up. I was here from day one." And the senior drill instructor was like, "No, you weren't. I don't remember you. I don't remember ever seeing you." But he was one of those recruits who didn't do anything great, didn't do anything bad, sounded off when he needed to, ran when he needed to, and just did everything that he was supposed to, and wasn't never noticed. And the drill instructor had to go in and look at the roster and check and see that this guy had been there the whole time and had never been noticed. But then today you have social media, and that guy will find you on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or whatever, and they'll be like, "I remember you doing this day." And for you, that's a non-event. It's the same thing you did the day before, and it's the same thing you did the day after. It's almost like Groundhog Day. And you're like, wow. And the perfect example of that was, I was standing outside of the academic instruction units, the classroom where the recruits go in and they get taught Marine history, they get taught core values, they get taught first aid, they get taught anything that they need to sit down in a classroom and see a movie or see pictures or handle their books or anything. And it's right on what we call the recruit highway, which was the main road of the recruits walk down to either go to the chow hall, to their barracks, to go to the store to buy toothpaste and soap, and also medical and dental. And these 2 recruits were walking back from dental, and it's about 50 yards from where I'm standing. And they don't see me because I'm under an awning, and they're having a good time because they're not with their drill instructor. They just sat in medical, where the Navy was really nice to them, and they got to goof off a little bit, decompress. And so they're walking back. They just walked out, and they're, haven't gotten back into recruit mode. And, I just yelled across the lawn, to lock it up. And, it scared them, and they got back into recruit mode and disappeared. Well, I leave the drill field. I go to another duty station for 3 years. I go to another duty station. It's at Camp Pendleton, and I'm I unfortunately had to take a Marine to the brig, and I'm standing outside, and there's the fence and all the cameras and the doors, and it's a prison, and the door opens for a split second. This Marine's head pops out sideways, looks at me, pops back in and closes. And I'm like, okay, what was that about? And, then my turn comes in, and, I go in and I get the guy processed in, and there's a Marine sitting behind the bulletproof glass, hitting all the buttons and doing all the paperwork. And I get done and I'm about to leave. And the Marine goes, excuse me, Gunnery Sergeant, I have a question for you. And I'm like, what is it, Lance Corporal? He goes, were you a drill instructor? And so now I look at him. I'm like, did I just not recognize one of my recruits, one of my Marines? And I'm like, yeah, there's no way he was one of mine. And I go, yes, I was. And he goes, you yelled at me. And I'm like, what? And he tells me the story. And it was enough for me to go, oh yeah, I remember doing that. Because, it wasn't one of my recruits, and it was just one of those things that, stood out for me too. And I was like, oh, okay. He's like, yeah, you terrified us. We had no idea you were there. And the way you yelled, we thought you were like right on top of us. And I was like, okay. It's amazing the effect you can have and the connections you can make.
Absolutely, man. That's what this is all about. That's why the connection to you is amazing, and just the connection to people that we have. Because again, if we don't have these conversations, we can't normalize anything. There's no stigma that's going to get erased without having these conversations and being able to have these conversations out in the open. And we got to start wrapping up, but I just wanted to share that I was recently able to speak to a bunch of law enforcement that work for crisis intervention training. And I got to share some stuff, and it was amazing the insight that I got, but also that they were very receptive to me and what I had to say. And it was awesome. And it was a great experience. And meeting people like you is what it's all about, because if we can, the community is much smaller than we make it out to be, but
Yep.
and the divisions that are amongst us are so small, but we make them so big. And by having conversations like this every week, we get to break those down. So thank you very much for joining us. We're going to finish it up. We always end up with 3 questions. So Timmy, take it away, buddy.
Yeah, real quick before I do that, just thank you for being here and thank you for your service in general. So the first question I have is, in your thoughts, is it more rewarding having your recruits training people to become a Marine, or is it more rewarding to do this side of it and spread kindness throughout and, maybe plant little seeds?
The missions are so different. It's hard to compare them. The advantage to this is you can see more of an effect, more of a positive impact immediately than when you're a drill instructor, because the drill instructor is 13 weeks and the change takes some time. And then, the Marine has to go out to the fleet, learn their job in the Marine Corps and perform as a Marine. So it's a longer, more drawn out process. Whereas here, you go out and you're collecting toys or you're doing an event. And I did an event. I was at the Altamont Fair and I had the box out, and a kid wanted to take a toy out of the box. He didn't understand. And so his father explained it to him, and, they took off, and, I didn't see him for a while, and they had gone to the arcade and won toys to donate. And so the effect was immediate. It was great. So I would have to say that now is more rewarding.
I got you. I understand that perfectly. Thank you.
What is one of the biggest lessons? Because I can't say the biggest, because I don't think we ever learn our biggest lesson, maybe until we're on our deathbed. Maybe, I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. But what is one of the biggest lessons about yourself that you learned from going from your role as a drill instructor to being this Gunny Claus? What is something that you learned about yourself that you weren't taught in the military, that you did not recognize?
I mean, if you asked any of my recruits, you asked any of my Marines if they would ever imagine me being the way I am right now, none of them in a million years would ever say that this is what I would be doing. Because, in the military, when I was a Marine, I pushed that hardcore line. You know, if we could make training harder and more realistic, that's what I tried to do. If I could push them for 12 hours, then I'd make it 24 hours. If we could make it 24, we'd go 36. If we had 3 meals, we went to 2 meals. Hot, cold, didn't matter. Because I wanted them to be as prepared as I could for whatever came up. And so if you looked at me then and now, you'd be like, there's no way that he's doing this. There's no way that he's smiling and he's being nice. They probably, look at me and go, yeah, that's an invasion of the body snatchers or something, because that's not the same guy.
That's amazing, man. It does go to show we are all capable of amazing things, and we just have to give ourselves the opportunity to let ourselves be molded by whatever life throws at us, man.
Yep, we got to be open to change.
That's right. You got to be open to change and willing to roll with it. And not all change. I mean, not all change is bad.
Most change is good, but you got to stick with the good and look for the positive. As they say, one door closes, another door opens.
Yep. Maybe not right away, but it will eventually.
Yep.
And thank you for sharing that, man.
I appreciate it.
So the last question is, if there was something that you would like to see done or that you could do for mental health as a whole without any kind of restraint, what would it be?
To be able to allow the person that has a problem be able to share it with me, and me to be able to understand it and find a way to help. Because like everything else, everything in relationships, everything in life, it's all about communication. And there are times where a person who has a problem can't communicate that problem so that others understand it, and they feel isolated. And that just makes the problem worse. And, and then there are times where, they'll express it, and the person doesn't hear the problem. And they're like, unfortunately in the Marine Corps, we say it a lot, suck it up. You got a boo-boo, suck it up. You're tired, suck it up. You didn't get enough food, suck it up. And, it comes out to an expression of embrace the suck. The worse it gets, the more you enjoy it. And so that's the thing, is for the person to be able to express that problem, to express what they're feeling, for me to be able to hear it and understand it, and then to be able to work towards a solution. And those are so difficult to do, because if you just for a split second, if you're not paying attention, and the person is opening their heart, and they don't see that connection, they shut down and they don't want to talk about it. And they clam up, and they go, nobody cares. And they get isolated. And so that's the really hard part, is to honestly be there, present in the moment, to be able to help somebody, because we all have our own lives and we all have our own things going on. And sometimes somebody says something and it affects us in a certain way, and we can't help, we can't do anything. I had a young Marine who when I was in, was an alcoholic. And my solution was, a bigger hammer, because that's what the Marine Corps gave me, was bigger hammers. You had a problem and the first hammer didn't work, you didn't go to anything else, you just got a bigger hammer. And, the amazing thing is several years ago, because of social media, he reached out to me, and, he's going through the 12 steps, and he apologized for, all the problems. And, I turned around and said, I didn't know how to solve that problem. I hadn't been given the training yet. And, in the Marine Corps, a lot of people abuse alcohol. And so it was difficult for me to see that line between abuse and the medical condition that he had of alcoholism. And, you know, in my mind, it's like, hey, dude, you just put down the drink. I put down the drink when I'm done. I don't have to pick up a drink. And, you know, you can't, I couldn't get the message. It wasn't until much later. And so, you know, I had to apologize to him and say, look, I really didn't help you. I really didn't give you what you needed. I'm sorry. And so, you know, we're now good friends.
Dude, there's no better way to end it. Thank you so much for that. That was awesome. Gunny, Operation Gunny Claus. We're going to keep talking about this as we start to get into, after the summer's over, when we start to ramp up the toy drive, we'll start to mention this quite a bit. So we have a lot of friends that do collect toys, but if you've got events that you know about, please share.
I have one event, and this is for 22 a day.
Okay.
It's hosted by an organization called Irreverent Warriors. They're national. They have what we call silky hikes across the country. We're going to have one in New York City in August. And let me double check the date, because I don't want to give you the wrong date. Like I said, it's in New York City. It's only for veterans or active duty military. It's August 26th. They can go online and look it up, Irreverent Warriors Silky Hike. When we do our PT, we have PT gear, and one of the pair of shorts that we used to wear were made by a commercial company, and they're nylon, and they looked, you know, like shorts and, you know, hoochie coochie shorts. And, you know, so they're nicknamed Silkies by the Marines. They're Ranger panties in the Army. You know, everybody's got a little different name for them, but we get together, and through camaraderie and comedy, we talk about our problems and we work together. Like I said, I was just down in New York City yesterday, and one of the guys there is in some treatment, and, you know, he came out, and, you know, it was really good to see him. I hadn't heard from him in a while, and people were concerned, but, you know, I was like, dude, it's so good to see you. I'm so glad you're getting the help that you need. Can't wait to see you next month at the hike. And, you know, that was the whole thing. You know, once again, we're just having a great time.
That goes to show, man, that real therapy doesn't look like therapy at all, man. It's not about sitting there. I mean, that is important. Don't get me wrong, but the most important therapy is the connection that we create with other people just like us, man. And thank you so much, Gunny, for being here, man. It's been awesome. Don't forget, I'll post everything in the show notes. I already have the link for Reverent Warriors in my notes that I've been taking as we've been talking. Let us know. We'll set up another time as we get closer, you know, as we start to wrap the toy drive up. You know, if you got something big going on or whatever, we can definitely connect.
I appreciate that.
You're very welcome, man. We appreciate you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for being here today with us, man, and have a wonderful day.
Yep. You too.
Thank you, Gunny Claus.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Will.
You got it, buddy. Have a great day. Timmy,
you too.
Another amazing conversation, dude. Holy shit.
Yes, sir.
Ho, ho, hoorah.
Will, until next week.
You got it, man. Until next week, get well.
Be safe.
Stay
above. Thank you for giving us a listen. New episodes every Wednesday. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, you can share, rate, review, and even subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. Other ways to support the show: follow us on social media, share the content, share our episodes. You can also buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/abovegroundpod. For further concerns, show ideas, or just to say hi, you can email us at abovegroundpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, thank you for listening and supporting mental health. Keep the conversation going and stay above.